All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fifth part of our foundational community support Golden Thread documentation series. We are covering ISP intervention development today, and we'll speak a little more to what that looks like, but we wanted to share with you some interventions that we thought were quite helpful. And this is by no means a exhaustive or comprehensive list, really just an overview of suggested evidence-based practices. And we'll cover what services are specifically seen in both supported employment or supportive housing through your Medicaid regulations. So thank you for joining us. We will share, or Emily has already shared, the session 5 PowerPoint in the chat box. So feel free to take a look at that as we go through this presentation. Before we begin, we just wanted to once again welcome you. Today's training is hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. As always, this is an interactive training, and we encourage you to ask questions and participate throughout this session, whether that's through unmuting yourself or sharing responses in the chat. As we mentioned, we have shared the PDF version of the PowerPoint in the chat. The slides, as well as a link to the recording of this webinar, will be sent by email after the presentation. If you haven't received the emails to the recordings, we do ask and encourage you to reach out to the folks at Washington State Healthcare Authority. We have also found that they are actively posting onto their YouTube channel the recordings. If that's easier to access those recordings on YouTube, feel free to check them out there. Last I checked, they were being posted regularly, which is exciting. If you have any concerns about past PowerPoints, let us know as well. But the recordings, unfortunately, we do not have access to. So we do ask that you either check out the YouTube channel or connect with folks at Washington State Healthcare Authority. All right, so let's begin. As always, just a couple housekeeping training basic items that we wanted to cover. We do ask that you connect to audio and mute your audio if you are not speaking. Feel free to unmute if you are looking to participate. You have the ability to keep your camera on or off, just making sure that your background is appropriate and that there aren't any individuals or clients in the background, just to maintain confidentiality. We do reserve the right to mute your video at any time if that happens to come up, or if background is inappropriate. Feel free to, again, use the chat throughout. And as we mentioned, this webinar will be recorded and will be sent to you thereafter. All right. So we are in our 5th training today. So we have covered quite a bit. So we are in our second to last training, just one more to go. Happy December. So we have so far covered all of the following. We've covered the introduction to the Golden Thread and Psych Rehab, the assessment process and how to prioritize those areas of need, the individualized service plan, which we know differs depending on the agency that you work in, the name of this plan specifically, whether it's service plan, recovery plan, rehabilitation plan, however that looks for you, as well as identifying goal development, specifically using the SMART framework that Emily had covered last week. And then today we'll be covering some interventions that can be quite helpful for you throughout your process. And next week, we're wrapping up with our last session of what it looks like to follow through on this. I just knocked a water bottle down off my desk. What it looks like to provide and document these services in real time. All right. Let's get started. I'm just going to give some folks. Okay. So I've already introduced myself in a previous training, but again, my name is Crystal Sosha. I'm one of the senior training and consultation specialists, along with Emily Bands and Earl Leach, here in the state of New Jersey in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions at Rutgers. So we are here to offer you with training and support. We offer these trainings to Washington and have been offering trainings throughout the state of New Jersey as well. And similarly, as I mentioned the last time I was here, have served in a role like yours, so hoping to offer some support in a capacity that feels relevant. All right. So we typically or always offer you with a learning application. So we're checking in on what was shared last time. And we really covered the SMART framework, specifically understanding goals and objectives, being able to identify what SMART format looks like. So checking in with all of you, just a yes or no in the chat. Were you able to practice using the SMART framework? And if so, how did it go? Lindsay, I'm seeing yes, went so well. We love to hear that. I'm seeing yes, I work on these every day. Things seem to be flowing well. Wonderful, wonderful. As a peer, we love to circle back to SMART goals. Absolutely. So far, clients do really well on these. Awesome. Okay. So it sounds, oh, I'm seeing more responses. Kelly says, yes, assisted clients with timeline goals, and they started really working to achieve them. Rachel, not yet. At least not related to this training. But do use SMART framework and it works well. Wonderful. All right, and I'm seeing a couple more yeses. All right, so it sounds like we have a pretty good understanding of the SMART framework. Genesis, I'm seeing client appreciated breaking down goals, making them more obtainable. Using SMART, and it helps a lot. Yep. Awesome. And, you know, keep in mind how you set goals for yourself. Oftentimes, you know, we shared this last week, but you don't go to bed and wake up and start something brand new without having any idea or sense of what that might look like. That would be incredible if you did, but we know that. Oh. Melanie, were you going to add something? Okay. We know that it is so important to really break this down and to help individuals make it feel attainable, realistic, relevant to their values and who they are as a person, achievable in the amount of time that you're setting, and specific enough so that they're able to really understand. And if another staff then works with this person, they can understand exactly what you're covering with the individual in the meetings that you have with them. All right, thank you for all of that feedback. So for today, we will be covering some of the following. So we'll identify types of foundational community support interventions. We'll identify and apply methods of foundational community support interventions using evidence-based practices. And some of these are listed here. So we'll cover motivational enhancement strategies, cognitive behavioral techniques, illness management and recovery, and the toolkit and what that looks like, and some other skills teaching that will take some time to go throughout. So we have a lot of really exciting interventions. You may be familiar with some, not with others. So we're hoping that you can take some of this back and use it in the work that you do with individuals. And so when we're covering the golden thread, we're really in this middle section here now. So we spoke last time about what it looks like to develop that individualized service plan. And now we're really working to, again, this kind of in between of what it looks like to identify some of those interventions and how it looks to offer those interventions with persons served. We really want to make sure these interventions are individualized and unique to the person that you're working with, because we know that what works for one person may not work for another person. And what you're doing with one client may not be relevant for another client. So keeping that in mind, as always, we are always tailoring our interventions and providing services that are intentional and meaningful to the person that we're seeing. Okay. So when thinking about the intervention, we also need to think about the goal and objective because it all connects. So when we're looking at this kind of thread that happens, we're looking at the goal as this larger goal or perhaps outcome that this person wants to achieve. And then that then transitions into that kind of next layer of the objective, which includes a step or steps. It could be 1 to 3 steps, often written on this person's plan. So these are those steps that this person needs to achieve their goal. And oftentimes is really prioritized through those knowledge, skill, and resource form that we had shared with you in the past. So identifying what does this person need to know? What do they need to do? What do they need to have to be successful in this goal? And that's often laid out in that objective section. And what we'll be looking at today specifically is the intervention piece. So what staff will do to support the person in goal achievement. So how will you help this person achieve their goal, making sure that it is specific and relating back to the objective, and then identifying, does this intervention support the desired outcome? So does it support the larger goal? Does it help the person achieve their objective? Does it make sense? And the amount of intervention should be reasonable. So we know that we're sharing a lot of interventions and strategies with you today, but that by no means means that you have to now add every single intervention onto your service plan, because we know that that's not feasible. I mean, we're only one human and the person you're working with is only one person as well. So we can't do everything in the amount of time that we have with individuals. Okay. Check it in with us. Does this connection make sense? Okay. Great. So some helpful questions to ask when writing interventions include some of the following. So how will the intervention support the client's goal and objective? And more specifically, this might look like asking what information needs to be shared. So do you need to offer some level of psychoeducation, information sharing, education in general? What skills need to be taught or practiced? So much of the work that we're doing is skills teaching. So what do we need to teach? What does this person now need to practice to reach this objective or larger goal? And then what resources need to be acquired? So maybe this person needs to know where the local recovery support meetings are. And by that, they need to have access to the internet. And by that, they need support in learning how to use a computer or using a smartphone to access where those recovery support meetings are located. So I will ask all of you, if we're thinking about the objective of getting to appointments on time by bus, what is needed for this objective? What information, what skills, what resources would you support someone as some of those interventions to help this person? Olivia says bus schedule, absolutely. Berkeley, ability to tell time, orientation to place, absolutely. So some insight and knowledge of being able to tell time. Being able to read as well. Schedule, how to look for schedule online. Bus card, a reminder on their phone. Do they know how to ride the bus? Right, it's not as simple as just getting on the bus. Finances for a bus pass. Purchase versus card. They may need assistance in keeping track of appointments in their phone or on a small planner. Are they able to read the bus schedule? Sometimes they're confusing. Yeah. I take the train quite often to New York City and I still barely know how to read it. And then being in the train station, you're now struggling with all these people around you trying to read the sign on the screen. And now everyone's running to the train. So similarly, absolutely, it can be quite confusing. Maybe there's a bus connection, maybe, helping the person know what to do if the bus isn't on time. Reminder, supporting the client if they need help with bus information, time and schedule. Absolutely. Maybe there's access to a reduced fare pass, or maybe there's benefits for individuals who are over the age of 60 or 65. The address of the appointment. Yes. Oftentimes the bus doesn't stop right in front of an appointment. So is there maybe like a 1-minute walk that needs to happen, or it's like walking around the corner to get to the building? Jamie says resources for who to call for help with bus problems. Not me. Exactly. Yeah. Research with client and make copies of schedules. Highlight routes. Yeah. And depending on what this person has access to, what they're comfortable with using. Brianna says Google Maps is a great resource to teach participants how to use. Yeah. I remember having to use MapQuest and print out directions. So times have changed. All right. So we really have a sense of what is needed here. And these are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves, because it can be common knowledge for one person to get to an appointment by the bus if they're so used to using the bus and knowing the bus schedule and knowing the bus system and knowing, do you pay on the bus? Do you get a pass? Do you have to have a ticket on your phone? And Kayla, good point. It could also be worth looking into other transportation services specific to medical appointments. So maybe there's alternate options. Absolutely. Okay. So again, keeping in mind that there's a lot that goes into one single objective, and we know that we can't add 500 interventions, but there are different steps that are required to help this person get to their appointment on time, depending on if they're using a bus or another transportation service, or do they need someone to come with them. And all the things that you all mentioned are really great and important as well. So we'll speak a little more to additional interventions in just a moment. But we want to keep in mind some of the following. So most interventions should improve or restore a person's functioning. And this is specific to this person's chosen environment. And I know Emily has given some really great examples, or of people who have worked with clients in the past. So I'll share a couple of those, stealing from Emily's toolkit here. So thinking about when you are teaching a skill to a client, it is helpful to be in a place where this person will actually perform that skill. So has anyone ever been to a hotel for the first time, or a friend's house, or a new environment, and you didn't know how to turn the shower on to hot? Oh my God, yes.
Numerous times.
Yes, Emily's raising her hand. It's nightmare fuel, yeah. And you're like, however old you are, we're not going to talk about age here, but I've been doing this all my life. I don't understand. It's so embarrassing. And then you're trying to figure it out, and then you have to go ask for help. And Marina and Ryan, yes. Not to hot, but just to turn it on itself. Yes. Even turning it on is a challenge. So, you've got a different handle or a different faucet or a lever. I don't even know what you call these things in a shower. And then you have to try to turn the shower head on. And now the shower head is coming out of the shower curtain and it's coming onto the floor. So you've got this whole debacle happening. And so we want to keep in mind how important it is to teach someone to do a skill in the place that they'll be doing it. So if you've been using your shower at home all your life and you go to a new place and you don't know how to use it, makes sense. It's a new shower. And Lisa, more power to you. I always ask the front desk right away. Yes. And it is so amazing and wonderful to be able to ask for help. And we know that help is available. Thinking about how challenging this is for us, again, even simply turning on the shower is difficult, or new or foreign, or unknown. We also have shared an example in the past where a staff member was teaching someone how to cook for the first time after coming out of a state psychiatric hospital, and they wanted to specifically learn how to use the stove. So the staff member was teaching the client from the staff office using an electric stove, but this client's apartment had a gas stove. So long story short, skip to the end here. This person ended up leaving a pot on the stove for too long and had a small kitchen fire because they weren't used to the difference in heat and temperature for an electric stove versus a gas stove. And even I have a gas stove at home, so using an electric stove for me makes no sense. And the temperatures are completely different, and I don't understand it. And Rachel, yes, I feel so silly when I have to ask my friend how their shower works. I know, there's so many variations of showers, stoves, microwaves, coffee pots. I mean, we can't know everything, right? So the ability to ask for help is a challenge. But keep that in mind. So when you're teaching someone and specifically, thinking about this client, although it may have been a good intention to teach this client to learn how to use a stove in the staff apartment, the impact that this had was ultimately detrimental because this person had a gas stove and was not able to effectively or safely cook at their house. And Graham says, I burnt my turkey this year because I didn't understand convection baking versus regular baking. Yeah. There's so many features to an oven. You're not alone. That's what I'll say. You're not alone. But thank you for sharing some of those moments with us. And again, making sure that we're teaching, the point of this being teaching in their environment. So it may have been helpful to teach this client in their apartment rather than in the staff office. Another thing that we emphasize is doing with over doing for. So we want to support individuals in, instead of doing something for someone, we know how easy it can be to take over and say, you know what, I can just do this for you, not a big deal. I'll make the phone call for you. I can go ahead and get this started for you. It'll probably take me less time than it does for me to actually teach you, or by the time I teach you, we'll have this over and finished with. Whether this is with people in your real life or clients, rather than going ahead and doing something for someone, it can be helpful to do it with someone. So teaching them, collaboratively working with them, and doing this process together. So oftentimes I know in some of the work that I had done in supportive housing in New Jersey, we had supported individuals in just picking up a food bag from the food pantry for them and dropping it off at their house. But how different might it be to have them schedule that delivery together with them, being able to teach them how to make that phone call. Maybe this food pantry or food bank is able to deliver to them. Similarly, thinking about doing groceries. Oftentimes we are taking this person by our agency vehicle, and we are going to the grocery store with them, and we're helping them carry all these items, but the likelihood of them having someone do groceries with them forever or be there with them and have them, driven to the store as well as carrying those items, this person may not always be there to support them. So helping them understand how to support this level of independence rather than oftentimes we may be serving in this kind of caretaking, rescuing role. Sabrina says helps them feel like they're contributing and promotes self-sufficiency. Absolutely. And Gidget says even helping them work on a schedule for cleaning to make their environment clean and comfortable so they don't get overwhelmed really helps. Days groceries are delivered, make time to put things away. Yeah, exactly. It is so overwhelming to think about, for me at least, Sundays, and the idea of Sunday scaries are just too real for me. So oftentimes this looks like thinking about what I have to clean, all the laundry I have to do, the dishes that I have to do, getting my place in order, preparing for the work week, completing assignments for school, whatever that might look like. And then the day is gone and you're completely overwhelmed and you haven't even done half the things on your to-do list. So maybe breaking this down so that this person doesn't get overwhelmed or I don't get overwhelmed would be quite helpful. And there could be times where, yes, maybe it's more efficient to deliver groceries instead of pick up groceries. And is this possible for this person? The last part here that I'll share is we want to encourage and emphasize using teachable moments. So using some of those unexpected occurrences as teaching opportunities. And we are constantly, forever, anytime you spend being with an individual, we are constantly modeling behavior. So thinking about, I know some of the most frustrating things for me, and I'm sure clients alike, was trying to get a hold of the Social Security office, waiting in line at the Social Security office. It's almost like waiting in line at the deli at, a grocery store, and it's just like you're waiting for your number to come and it doesn't come, or they skip your number, and there's this level of frustration that innately happens within us, and you're ready to, I don't know, express your frustration. But what we're really modeling is this ability to regulate emotions and to handle a distressing situation and acknowledge and validate how frustrating this is, while also teaching the client that might be with us of how important it is or can be to use skills when we're at places that can be quite frustrating. Does anyone have any examples of teachable moments? We also ask maybe teachable moments while taking public transit, or moments where you have found yourself modeling behaviors unexpectedly. Danielle, I have one. Go for it.
I had a client just last week, and she has anxiety when sitting in crowds, and she needed her Social Security award letter. So what I did was I was like, well, I can wait for you in line, and then once your number is going to get called, then you can go and stand in line and take care of getting your award letter. And that actually worked out for the best because she didn't have to sit in line for an hour and get anxiety, and ended up, because if she had to do it on her own, she wouldn't do it at all because she'd get scared. But because I was able to wait in line for her, once she was able to get in line, she was able to take care of it, no problem.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, there's some moments where we're maybe working collaboratively with this person.
I have one.
Go ahead, Veronica.
I had a client that was homeless. It took about 9 months to house her. Finally, we did. She was terrified to pay her rent. She was like, can I just give you my card? We did that for a while, and I set her up with home and community, and then she got her caregiver, And it was something I would just call and say, hey, did you get your rent in? And then it went to how to write out the money order to now she's doing it on her own. And a couple of weeks ago, I had to tell her goodbye, and she had graduated, and we kind of cried a little bit. She told me thank you for everything we had done for her. She wouldn't have been where she's at, and all the little techniques that I showed her. So yeah.
Awesome. I love those moments where you really feel a sense of reward or validation or acknowledgement for the work that you're doing collaboratively. It makes the work all the better. And it's so incredible to see this person now be able to do this without you. Because again, that's the goal, right? We're not going to be here forever. Eventually we will have to part ways, whether it's us transitioning to another job, them transitioning out of our services. So I really love this idea of maybe we do start with doing some things for a person, but we transition to then doing with and more collaboratively. Thank you for sharing. See a couple others in the chat. Gidget shares, I had a client that got overwhelmed by just opening his mail. We made a plan to open mail once a week and made a container to put mail in so they can go through it slow and be accepting of what was in there. Love that. I find myself having the urge to do that for me. When I get mail, I just throw it in a pile. I used to have this little file folder on my desk where I would just add more mail. So that's a great idea. Stacy says public transit, budgeting finances. And Gidget, awesome. He now opens his mail without any assistance. So wow, how incredible is it? Now this person feels empowered to be able to do this on his own and be successful and not feel overwhelmed by the task or the simple idea of opening mail. And, maybe it's like, am I getting a bill? What's going to happen if I open this? Incredible. Awesome. So yeah, this happens quite often. There are so many moments where we are supporting individuals in skills that may be helpful to complete tasks. Rachel says the progress in each client is very rewarding. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's, exactly to kind of what Veronica was saying. It can get quite emotional when you're saying goodbye to someone because you're so proud of what they've accomplished and you're so excited to see the growth in them. And we know, eventually this person will transition on and continue to live independently without us. So that's the biggest success of all. All right, thank you for those examples. Okay, so we're going to cover types of skills and methods of acquiring skills and resources. So we talk about the types of skills, training, and resource acquisition, as well as methods. So this is just an overview of what we're about to cover. But when we look at types of skills, training, and resource acquisition, we look at pre- and post-tenancy skills and resources for our supportive housing folks, job search and sustaining skills and resources. If you're working in supported employment, we know that these skills are also seen throughout supportive housing, as well as those activities of daily living skills and resources. So things that just happen on the day-to-day that we may underestimate this person's current skill set and ability. And so when we'll look at some of these types of methods in acquiring skills and resources using evidence-supported or evidence-based interventions or practices, we're covering some of the following briefly today. So we're looking at skill teaching, including the tell, show, do method, motivational enhancement strategies, which kind of fall under this motivational interviewing umbrella, cognitive behavioral techniques, so using that theoretical framework, but using some of the interventions within CBT because we're not doing specifically psychotherapy with individuals, and then illness management and recovery. And we'll share that toolkit. Has anyone used any of these skills that are on the right side? And if so, which ones, or which are you most comfortable with using? Brianne says, I like CBT skills. Olivia's done mock interviewing. Benjamin says CBT. Catalina says skill teaching. And we'll talk specifically, maybe you use the tell, show, do method, but we'll also explore that as well. Okay. All right, so we've got a mix here. And we'll speak a little more specifically of what some of these skills look like and how to perform them or how to do them with individuals. Brian says skills teaching, emotional regulation exercises. I'm a big fan of DBT techniques. That is personally my own biased preference. So I'm constantly teaching distress tolerance, emotion regulation, mindfulness skills, interpersonal effectiveness. Those 4 modules are great. But today we'll cover these 4 specifically. So hopefully you'll learn something new or a takeaway from today. We have some handouts as well. This is just, again, an overview of some of the supported employment services. If you are someone who is providing these services, you are likely providing some of the following. So this kind of grouping of pre-employment services, as well as employment sustaining services. Does this look familiar to those providing supported employment services? Yes, okay, great. So we're on the same page then. And then we'll look at when you're someone who provides those supportive housing services, you're often in these 2 categories of pre-tenancy or post-tenancy. So you've got a whole list of skills that are included here. Are these skills familiar to our supportive housing folks? Okay. Awesome. So we'll be teaching skills or showing you skills and giving you a little bit of education on some of the skills that can be helpful for both of these services. So we hope that you have or may find them helpful. And as I mentioned, the skills or interventions that we're specifically covering today include those motivational enhancement strategies, cognitive behavioral techniques, illness management and recovery in the toolkit, as well as skill teaching using tell, show, do. So we're starting off with motivational enhancement strategies, and this is really developed from motivational interviewing. If I could just get a yes or no in the chat, are you familiar with motivational interviewing? Yes or no? Mostly yeses, a couple no's, some somewhats. Refresher would be great. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about what this looks like. So we know that some of these motivational enhancement strategies do come from motivational interviewing and really are client-centered or person-centered to help a person explore and resolve ambivalence about change, as well as to achieve lasting behavioral change. So what comes to mind, or what does it mean to have motivation? What is motivation? Anastasia says ambition. Stacy says the drive to better oneself. Marina and Ryan, the desire or willingness to do something. Jeffrey, the ongoing need to get it done. Motivation is the willingness and passion to accept or to accomplish things. Something that may create a sense of urgency to elicit changes. People do what they want to do. Yes. Internal reflection. Yeah. So there's so many definitions when we think about motivation and when we're really identifying, I'm seeing a couple more. Technique for having conversations with clients that involves asking open-ended questions so client comes to the conclusions themselves. Yes, absolutely. We are really supporting and guiding individuals rather than telling them what to do or enforcing a change upon them. Often some of this, specifically to motivational interviewing, comes from within. Okay. Yeah, so there's, again, a lot of really great responses here. And we're thinking about motivation. Oh, I'm seeing impetus. That's a great word. That's like a great SAT word. It's kind of this energy or force or drive. Can be positive or negative. Survival. Okay, so there's some layers here. Gives them active participation in their care. Your why. I love that. Yes. Your why, your reason, your desire, your running out of words, but yes, your why. So in motivational interviewing, we talk about this as this state of readiness or the probability that this person will enter into, continue, and adhere to a specific change strategy. Gail says the ability to see that one or a series of actions will benefit oneself combined with the willingness to take the action. Yes. And we talk a little bit about in just a moment kind of this cost. I think we do. Yes. The cost benefit analysis or this decisional balance. So we know that ambivalence about a behavior and change is normal. We know that change happens really by resolving some of that ambivalence and exploring those motivations and values to this person. We know that collaboration and empathy support individuals in this change, and ultimately people want to be their best selves, and people already, most of the time, or if not always, have what they need to be that best version of themselves. So I like to think of, the proper question or a good question to ask ourselves is not why isn't this person motivated, but for what is this person motivated? Okay. So we, again, want to think about motivational enhancement as this directive, client-centered approach, eliciting behavior change, maybe reducing some of that change talk, reducing some of the sustained talk, increasing the change talk. Okay. So some examples of motivational strategies that we'll take a look at. Excuse me, and someone just mentioned OARS. Is anyone familiar with this acronym OARS? I know it's written there for you, but is this something that you were taught? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Some knows, okay. Sounds familiar, and you're likely using it in the work that you do, and yes. Okay. Awesome. So we'll cover a little bit what this looks like, and we'll go through a handout in just a moment. But when we talk about OARS, specifically under motivational interviewing or motivational strategies, we talk about those open-ended questions that really encourage a person to talk. Oftentimes, open-ended questions come in the format of how or what. And that's okay, Randy, more to come. We often discourage or may not use as frequently close-ended questions because those evoke more yes or no are short answers, although the caveat here is sometimes you need to ask a closed-ended question. Like thinking about asking someone the street that they live on, you wouldn't say, tell me a little bit about the name of the street you live on and the house number of the street that you live on. Can you tell me a little more about that? It would really just be, what street do you live on? What is your address? There's some questions that don't require an open-ended format, but we know that it can be quite helpful to really facilitate this dialogue. Affirmations, we're looking more specifically at ways to support individuals in a behaviorally specific way to offer encouragement. And this is really more than praise or a compliment, but this really speaks to this person's strengths and values as a person. So maybe their determination, their ongoing effort, their skillfulness, their resilience, whatever aligns with this person. And then reflective listening, which is really, a huge element when we think about motivational interviewing. It is more than simply just, opening your ears and being with this person. What we really want to get out of reflections or reflective listening is having this person say, or instead of them saying, yes, I just said that, instead you want someone to really say, wow, that's exactly what I meant. So really wanting you to avoid perhaps parroting or mimicking this person, or repeating word for word what they're saying, but rather almost reflecting back in a paraphrasing way. We have a handout for that as well. And then summarizing. So when we talk about summarizing, this can happen in the beginning, middle, or end of your sessions or meetings with individuals. Does anyone use summarizing? Like in the beginning of your session, it might look like, last time we covered X, Y, and Z. Today, almost setting this agenda for yourself. Yes, okay. And then I find it helpful in the beginning if you're transitioning between topics, or if you need to clarify something, as well as at the end. So kind of wrapping up, summing up, maybe you've got another appointment to get to and what this person is saying is really important. So you are tying everything in a red bow and moving right along. Okay. So let me share both of these and then I'll go into the worksheet specifically. But we'll also share a worksheet for ambivalence and really discussing pros and cons. So when a person is really in that contemplation stage of change, they are trying to identify pros and cons, the good things about making a change, the not so good things about making the change. We really want to help them use this decisional balance, and we'll show you that worksheet in a moment. And Katie, love that. At the end, the plan for you is I think I missed a word. The plan for you is you will do X, Y, Z, and I will do 1, 2, 3. So this kind of collaborative process. Yes. Okay. And so again, with decisional balance, we really like to first and foremost ask the person, what are the good things about this behavior? So you're really getting this buy-in of what do they like about, let's say, smoking? What do they like about drinking? What do they like about staying at home? What do they like about not working? And so you're really getting that buy-in. Carrie says for a customer who we and they are struggling to find their motivation to work, I talked with a coworker about asking if their important social roles could be a motivator and suggested exploring that. Yes. Yeah, so people typically have valued life roles, social roles, connections that drive them to stay motivated and make change. So let me just show you what these worksheets look like. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. Hopefully I have them all open here. Yes. So there's so many variations. I will try to zoom in here of these handouts. We're including so many for you today. I think this one really actually specifically comes from corrections. So they're saying POs or probation officers, but it's just a really good comprehensive handout and really covers what I said or just shared with you all about open-ended questions. So using open-ended questions to provide the client with an opportunity to tell their story. Affirmations, acknowledging and supporting the client's struggles and hard work, reflecting, and then summarizing. So it's just a quick tool to turn to if you need that. And we can share that with you in the chat as well. There's so many variations to this, so keep that in mind. And then I just covered, let me zoom in here a little bit. So is anyone familiar with this decisional balance sheet? No, okay. Yes, no, yes, no, okay. So when we're thinking about, not this sheet, I need this for me, Jamie, I know, you're preaching to the choir here. This can be so helpful. So when we're thinking about changes, most of us may not necessarily consider all the sides of change. We're just considering pros and cons. And this is actually pros and cons of, again, the good things and the not so good things. So instead of only looking at one side of this, we want to look at all of it. And oftentimes this is specific to individuals who may use substances, but really is helpful for any kind of change. Yes, often used in substance use disorders. Absolutely. You read my mind. So I like to start, and this is actually a different format. Benefits, I talk about what are the good things about this behavior. So what are the good things about not changing? What do you like about using this substance? What do you like about staying at home? And you're hearing this person say, well, I feel less anxious when I use substances. I feel more comfortable at home. It's warmer in my house. I don't have to go outside. And then you're thinking about some of the not so good things about this behavior. So looking at this in a way of identifying first, what are the good things? What are the not so good things? So the costs of not changing. What are the costs about making this change? So what are the not so good things about changing this behavior? What's difficult about this behavior? What's difficult about stopping? And then lastly, I like to end with, what are the good things about making this change? Because again, first you're getting the buy-in. What are the good things about not changing? Or again, in other words, what are the good things about this behavior? What do you like about it? And then you kind of go in this counterclockwise direction. So I would do this bottom left as 1, the second one as 2, third one over here as 3, and the fourth one over here as 4. And Claire, maybe you might be onto something. Yeah, so ending with what are the good things about changing this behavior? Of course, summarizing everything that was said. Maybe there's something to be said about this person hearing out loud the last thing that was mentioned. Maybe there's a benefit to this person acknowledging, okay, some of the good things that exist about changing this behavior or not using substances are some of the following. And Emily, if you can share some of these in the chat. I think she's here unless she may have lost connection. Let's see. Oh, Emily's here. Emily, if you could include both of these in the chat, that would be helpful. Okay. Any questions on either ORs or decisional balance and using this handout? Okay. And give us just a moment. Let's see. I wonder if I can just share this in the chat myself. And then Emily can share that PDF version with you all in just a moment. All right, there's the motivational interviewing one, or the ORS one rather. And then here is the link to the decisional balance. Let me know if those work. I think Emily's trying to access the PDF, so we will share that with you in just a moment. Let me switch screens here. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay, I'm glad those worked. Okay. Thank you, Emily. All right, so thinking about a client that might be ambivalent about preparing for an apartment interview or preparing for an interview in general, maybe for a job, what is an open-ended question you might ask? A person is ambivalent about preparing for an apartment interview or an interview in general. What is an open-ended question you might ask? Sabrina says, describe to me your ideal job. Jamie says, what are you worried might go wrong? Yeah, that's a great question. Oftentimes there's some intense emotions. Ask them how they want you to support them or why they want to work on it. Kayla says, I would lead with, how are you feeling about the interview? This would give me an idea of their confidence or concerns. Yes. And sometimes you might run into the challenge of this person is perhaps saying yes, 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 just to kind of end the conversation with you. Or I had a friend who on the job would always, chronically people please and would say, sure, 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 no problem, sure, sure, sure. But really inside is like internally suffering. So keeping in mind the relationship that you have with this person and the ability to probe for further questions, to really help understand what some of those intense emotions or their thoughts and feelings behind it. Harry, do you remember any questions that were easier to answer at a past interview? Yeah, so maybe starting with some of their strengths. Tell me about a time when you had a successful interview or interaction. What went well? What would you like to improve on? Yeah, so I'm loving this strengths-based perspective. We're really able to support someone in identifying things that went well, to perhaps instill this hope in this person that it is possible to achieve this interview or pass this interview or be successful in this interview. And if not, again, we offer additional support thereafter. Awesome. All right. Let's keep it moving. We'll do one more before our short break here. So we're talking a little bit about some techniques and strategies from cognitive behavioral therapy. But again, these are just those interventions within it. So oftentimes we look at CBT as ways to modify behavior or restructure thoughts. That could be unhelpful, unproductive. They could be quite distressing or overwhelming. So thinking about some thoughts that maybe we hear quite often. What is an unproductive or unhelpful thought that maybe you've heard from individuals you've served about applying for an apartment? It is too confusing. Absolutely. I have a criminal history. Maybe I can't pass a background check. They don't like me. Nobody will take me because of my criminal history. Hopelessness about being approved. So maybe I will never get approved. I have too many prior evictions. The landlord will judge me because I'm unhoused. Why do I have to answer so many questions? They want too much from me. All of this is overwhelming. I have no rental history, background eviction, lack of credit, bad credit. What if I get in and then get kicked out? No credit or rental history. Nobody wants me. Yeah. They're judging me based on my appearance. Yeah, some of that internalized stigma. Maybe concerns about using the housing voucher, affording current rental rates, having a pet. This is boring. I don't want to waste my time. Yes. The honesty here is real. I don't have money to pay for the application fee. It's a waste of time. Not having a co-signer. They're insensitive to my situation. Yes. And oftentimes it is this kind of like heavy, dark cloud weighing over us, or weighing over this person. You know, I'm not good enough. Why bother? I won't get it anyway. I'll never be able to live on my own. I can't work because I need an address for mailing, or, you know, I don't want to work until I have a place to live. Lisa, absolutely. Gestalt is good for breaking those barriers by switching role playing. It allows them to ask the questions they feel. Yes. The leasing agent doesn't make 3 times the rent. Why should I? Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, there's some truth to some of these thoughts. So we are looking at and hearing and validating and acknowledging how frustrating these thoughts and feelings are. And so we're talking about some examples that can be quite helpful in doing some of this work with individuals. So whether it's the example we just mentioned, or whether it's supporting individuals in another skill, for this one, we're talking about taking medication every day. We talk about some options, including behavior tailoring, which really just means you're looking at this person's current routine and how to add this behavior into their life. And I'll share that file in just a moment. And then cognitive restructuring, we talk about identifying some of those unproductive or unhelpful or distressing thoughts, feelings about maybe taking medication or applying for this apartment, or applying for a job or looking for a job, whatever the situation might be. And we're really using some skills that can be quite helpful. So is anyone familiar with the catch it, check it, change it in CBT? No. No, somewhat. Okay. So we'll give an example handout as well that I'll share on my screen in just a moment. But I'll give kind of an overview of what this might look like. So when we're helping individuals to identify some of these thoughts or feelings related to this difficult situation, we want to first help them catch this thought. So when your client or consumer or person you're working with is saying things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, people don't like me, I'll never get this, I won't ever be able to get this apartment, get this job, or take this medication, I don't like taking this medication, I don't have any problems, I am not crazy, I don't need this medication. We talk about some of these skills. So we're just helping them first observe or noticing this thought is coming up. We're then checking this thought. So what this might look like is asking, you know, is it a credible and true thought? Are you thinking wisely? Is it really true? Do you have evidence to back up this thought? Would other people interpret this thought in the same way? Is your mood affecting the way that you're thinking? And then changing this thought is this last piece here. So maybe identifying what is a more accurate and helpful thought. How would you talk to a close friend or loved one who is experiencing something similar? Because we know when those distressing thoughts control someone, it can be difficult to change or control those behaviors associated with them, especially when the situation is quite unpleasant. So let me switch screens. Emily just shared one in the chat. We're doing a lot of screen sharing here today. All right. So Emily just shared the handout that walks through behavior tailoring. There's a download practice tool PDF that you can access here as well. And then it includes the steps here. This one's specific to.
Hi, Linda. I got the address. Okay, let me grab it.
Thank you. Some steps to behavior tailoring and what this might look like. Here is the PDF document that can be quite helpful, so we'd encourage you to take a look at this as well. And then the last and most important one that I was hearing a lot of no's for was this catch it, check it, change it worksheet. So we'll share this for you as well in the chat. And so this really looks like helping this person identify what was happening. So this can be kind of an afterthought or after the situation occurred. Where was I? What was I doing? What feelings was I having at the time? What was I doing? And then identifying with this person, what were some of their thoughts? And this can include any and all of the thoughts. So after that, as I mentioned, we are then supporting this person in checking those thoughts. So what's evidence for this thought? Evidence against this thought? And if you haven't provided any education or psychoeducation around common mistakes in thinking or cognitive distortions, that's okay. But the last part here is then helping this person identify what is a more accurate and helpful thought. So again, what would you tell a loved one or a close friend or someone who's experiencing something similar? Yes, this worksheet is a holy grail. It is incredible. We will share this as well. Emily, if you can put that in the chat for us, please. Am I able to as well? All right, I think I did it. So again, wonderful, super useful worksheet. And this is really not to shame a person for their thinking, but rather to help them identify ways to get through a situation that can be quite distressing and overwhelming. Okay. Any questions on this handout? Quick and easy. This was adapted from a book here or a guide here. Okay. Right. Let me switch screens once again. Okay. We'll skip that question for now. I'm glad you're enjoying the handouts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's so many handouts that exist in the world. You'll be overwhelmed with handouts, but we'll take a quick break. A couple more things to go through. Let's give ourselves 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So returning the time change. You should not have to log in to download it. Just press download on the top right. It should work. If not, I'll ask Emily for some support. I'll try to share that during the break. Let's give ourselves a couple minutes. I'm going to pause the recording so I can do this math. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got some more coffee, water, had a quick bathroom break, did what you needed to do. Maybe you did a note really fast, whatever you needed with that break. And we will just keep it moving. So the next couple skills we'll be talking about are IMR and the tell, show, do method. Is anyone familiar with IMR? Or have you used any parts of this toolkit? No. Great, you're learning more today. So this is actually good news. Have no fear, more to come. Okay. Some. All right, stand by for more. So IMR was created with the intention of supporting individuals who are experiencing serious mental health conditions in their ability to monitor symptoms and self-management. So IMR includes some of the following. So it talks about education about mental illness or medication. It talks about medication self-management skills. It talks about substance use, treatment strategies, harm reduction, relapse prevention. It talks about coping with stress, building social support. There's a whole bunch more that I'll share with you actually in just a moment. And when we look, you know what? Let me share it first. Why not? Okay, please hold. Emily, if you can share this toolkit in the chat, that would be helpful. All right, so this is what the whole guide itself looks like. Please don't feel the need to print out the whole handbook. There are 361 pages, so you may break your office's printer. But there are some pieces that we hope you may find helpful. And again, here are, let me zoom in a little bit more. Here are some of the modules that are covered, or topics that are covered under this curriculum. So recovery strategies, facts about mental illnesses, it's kind of a psychoeducation piece, the stress vulnerability model and treatment strategies, building social support, using medication, substance use, reducing relapses, coping with stress, and coping with problems, getting needs met by the mental health system. So in this handbook, and I apologize, I'll just scroll a bit here. There is so many resources specific to each module. So you'll see it breaks down each specific element. So we're talking about recovery strategies, facts about different types of mental health conditions, strategies and resources, how to build supports and use meds, so many things. So when you go to a handout, you'll see that this is helpful for both individual and group sessions, and it literally breaks down what is helpful and what you need for each session. It talks about what you need to do in each session. This is just the overview. Let me move past this. Okay, so if we're looking at topic 1 for recovery strategies, it gives you an introduction, talks about the goals, what handouts you'll need. So again, you don't need to print out all 361 pages, but there can be, let's say for this one, just topic 1 on recovery strategies. The structure of the session, some of the strategies, how you're going to go about each section. So reviewing the handout, taking time for interaction, breaking the content into manageable pieces. And I won't spend forever going through each slide or each page, but what this toolkit does is really break down each element. It offers homework or practice examples. You know, there's some reluctance about talking about recovery, and you can adapt this in a way that makes sense for you. This is an evidence-based tool. Okay, so here's a handout, for example. Helping individuals identify what does the word recovery mean to you. You know, there's some true or false engagement questions. Anyway, I'm going to get carried away here, but please take a look at this resource and use what you need. You know, I would say take what you need and leave the rest behind if it's not so helpful. Some things will help and some things will not. Now, where's my slide? Okay. And so when we're using this toolkit, what we really just want to emphasize, again, as I mentioned before, there are so many handouts, so we want to be mindful of just focusing on having a conversation with this person. Do your best not to go into your next meeting or next appointment with someone and say, oh my gosh, these are all the handouts that I just learned today. I'm so excited to tell you about every single handout. Here they are. And you have like a stack of handouts, because I found myself guilty of doing that because I'm a big handout fan myself. But we really just want to focus on having a conversation. You're modeling behaviors, you're getting to know the person and what they need. They may not find every handout helpful. So tailoring some of those handouts to the persons that you're working with. Okay. And again, there are so many modules within this, and we recommend just going to the topics and resources that will help the most. Don't feel responsible for covering them all. And maybe one day you will. But again, this is helpful in both an individual or a group session. Okay. So we are going to cover our last skill of the day here, the tell, show, do method. And we'll talk about some of those skills teaching steps. So before we begin, what is a common skill you write on your individualized service plan or your plan for supporting individuals, or a common skill that you teach individuals? Stacey says interviewing skills. Yes. Resource navigation, emotion regulation, advocating for selves. Jeffrey, are you saying time management skills? I'm imagining teaching someone how to tie a tie. Time management. Relapse prevention planning. Arriving on time. Yes. Okay. So there's, again, so many skills that we are so used to teaching, providing education on, but do we use this method? So we'll talk a little bit about the tell, show, do method. Has anyone provided the tell, show, do method when teaching skills? Yes. Okay. So it sounds like many of us are familiar, some not yet. Okay, and no worries. So we talk about some of these steps or some of these kind of areas of the most common or perhaps most effective way in teaching a skill. We first and foremost want to talk about the rationale. So you're really getting buy-in, you're establishing what the purpose of using this skill is, what's the benefits, how this might help you, and you're breaking it down into its individual steps. You're then showing this person, so through modeling, what this skill looks like. This is how you perform this skill. This is how you might answer this interview question. This is what to thinking of like baking or cooking, what this might look like, maybe role playing with this person. And then you're allowing this person try the skill. So they're now doing the skill. You're at the same time once you're seeing them do this skill, you're also providing positive, constructive, and corrective feedback. And then you're having the person maybe try it again with some of that feedback, as well as providing additional opportunities for homework practice can be quite helpful. So maybe you're telling this person, I'm trying to think of one. Let me go back to the skills that we just shared. So if we're talking about relapse prevention planning and they're learning a coping skill, and maybe that coping skill is, hitting an afternoon slump here. I won't give an example just yet. I'll show us what it looks like instead. So again, we're using this format to go through what it looks like to teach a skill. So this was quite helpful, or came up quite often during the height of the pandemic. We have a handout or steps that were, I believe, adopted from a larger hospital system of modeling how to use hand sanitizer. So the first part here, you'll see why and when hand cleaning is important. We talk about cleaning prevents illness, disease spread, before and after activities, interactions, any other additional times or reasons when to use this. We'll talk about then the next method here is identifying, okay, what is this for? So when do you use soap and water versus when you use hand sanitizer? And then we're laying out the steps. And this can be quite helpful to use for someone if they need to learn how to use hand sanitizer. So you're now showing this person what this might look like. This person now has an opportunity to practice themselves. At the end, giving this person corrective feedback of what that might look like. Did anyone ever, this reminds me of when you're in elementary school and the teacher puts something on your hands and you go to the bathroom to wash your hands and you come back and they put the blue light and you see all the germs on your hands. That's kind of what this reminds me of. But again, this can be quite helpful for individuals if they need it. But we are going to talk about another method here. And again, really laying out some of these skills. So again, we're providing an orientation to this skill. What skill will be taught? What's the rationale? How are we teaching this skill? Listing the steps of the skill. Does anyone write out the steps of a skill when working with someone? So if you're teaching, let's say, how to boil water, are you writing down every step with them? Sometimes, yes. Depending on the individual. Okay. Right. And this is important because keeping in mind the person that you work with, maybe there's some steps that aren't necessarily needed versus some steps that this person may not be aware of, some steps that they are aware of to ensure no confusion. Absolutely. Yeah. And absolutely depends on this person entirely for sure. So the next step here is we are now going to demonstrate the skill. This person will have an opportunity to practice the skill, of course, in a real life situation and an environment that this person would be using this skill. Anastasia, that's very thoughtful. I'll email a summary sometimes after having a conversation. Yeah. And hopefully you're offering an opportunity to practice. Does anyone offer homework or encourage this person to practice outside of your meeting with them? I know homework can feel, the word homework might feel painful for some. I said practice. Whatever works for the person you're working with. Okay. Some people really enjoy handouts. Some really enjoy the ability to do this on their own and then come back to the next meeting and tell you how excited and how, wonderful it was practicing this skill. Or in the same vein, some of the challenges that came up for them. Okay. Has anyone used, if not a template like this, any kind of skills teaching template? Or what is your strategy for teaching a skill? That could be a helpful question instead. Catalina, yeah, I love that. Let's practice this during the week and we'll talk about it. Okay. So we'll talk about then what it might look like to really use this skill in real time, or skills teaching template in real time. And it can be quite helpful to use this outline here. So we are going to, as a large group and on your own, break down the steps to a skill. And we are going to be breaking down the steps specifically to brushing your teeth. So we want us just to practice on our own. Don't put anything in the chat just yet. But if you can, maybe open up a Word document, and then you can copy and paste it in the chat in a couple minutes. But writing down a comprehensive list of steps to brush your teeth for someone with limited knowledge and experience. And we'll ask you to type and share it by the chat. So again, this can be steps that are as specific, as detailed as you might need. We've seen 5 steps up to 15 or more steps. So we'll give us like 7 to 10 minutes to break down these steps to a skill. And then we'll ask that you share this in the chat. So I will pause the recording for this moment here, but give us just about, like I said, 7 to 10, maybe 10 minutes to write down some of these steps. If you're in a group, you'll have to come to an agreement or consensus. Let me pause the recording. Seeing more responses. So I will take a look at some of them and hopefully you get a chance to look at some that others have shared. So there's a whole variety, which is really exciting. I saw someone share about flossing first, before even brushing the teeth. I saw someone emphasize the importance of going to the bathroom sink. Some people, ooh, someone says schedule time in the morning. Make sure you have the tools. That's pretty cool. Maybe this person needs to purchase or obtain toothbrush or toothpaste. Some people are just getting right into it. We're grabbing the toothbrush, we're wetting the toothbrush. Someone included once in the morning and once at night, locating the toothbrush, locating the toothpaste, hold and wet the toothbrush. Yeah, okay, so we've got some pretty thorough details here. I think I saw someone write smile at the end, which was sweet. Gather your toothbrush and toothpaste next to the sink. Open the toothpaste, twist the cap, remove the silver seal. Oh yeah. Wet the head of the toothbrush, apply a pea-sized amount. Okay, so I'm seeing some themes that are coming up. And yes, it's so important to identify. Oh, Sabrina says acquire a toothbrush and follow a YouTube video on brushing teeth. Marina and Ryan, I like we're going to the bathroom. We're now opening the drawer. grabbing the toothbrush. Okay. It's a good point to notice, like, where does someone keep their toothbrush? Is it out on the sink? Is it next to their bed? Is it in the kitchen? Is it in the cabinet? 26 steps, the thoroughness, I love it. Oh, I'm seeing someone shared, fill the cup with water for when rinsing. Yeah, so there's some people who are rinsers and they have a cup of water. Some people like splash water into their mouth. Awesome. I'm scrolling through and reading some of these. And again, keep in mind what's helpful for the person that you're working with. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm seeing a difference in length of time for brushing teeth. Some good questions. Is there already a bedtime routine? Do they shower or use the bathroom? My partner brushes his teeth in the shower, which I just find, it's a judgment-free zone, but it's an interesting approach. We're just knocking two things out at the same time. We're washing the hair and brushing the teeth. Okay. All right. Thank you for indulging me in this activity. And there's some repeating of steps. Brushing tongue. I realized that there are some toothbrushes that have a tongue scrubber on the back of it. And now I know people also use a separate tool for scrubbing their tongue or brushing their tongue. So many strategies here. Okay. Thank you for sharing this. Again, keeping in mind, and I really did this, I guess, for you all, but noticing some of the differences in the list of steps shared. What was this process like, though? So how was it writing this list? Was it easy? Was it challenging? Did you have to think about what you do in the morning or evening or middle of the day? I thought way too hard about this. Yeah. Yeah, because you really have to think about, not only are we now thinking about our typical routine, we're also thinking about the environment that this person may be in. So if they don't have, or they have limited knowledge and experience with practicing this skill, what do they need to know that I maybe already know, or I already have my toothbrush in the bathroom, or I already have access to these things? Kayla says, I think it's good practice imagining how to teach someone something that we can sometimes take for granted as a skill. Absolutely, yes. So that is really the point that I'm trying to make here. So thank you for saying it so eloquently. It's so important that we recognize some of the strengths that the people we serve have, but also some of the challenges and things that we may know inherently, but they may not know. Marina and Ryan, this was fairly easy due to the clientele base that we have worked with, specifically with DDA supported individuals. Awesome. Okay, so you were rattling out that 26-step list like no problem. Okay, seemed easy to do, but putting it in the format is different. Okay. I brushed mine in the shower, which made it challenging. And it was hard to think of typical ways to brush teeth, as if I was explaining to my child. Yes. Yeah, so again, everyone has their preference of how we're getting things done or how tasks are completed. And Jeffrey, thank you for sharing, for trying yours with the client for the bus ride to work. Because that can be so detailed in itself. Awesome. Okay, so again, we encourage you to take some time and practice these kind of moments where you can break down the steps of a skill with someone, because it's not as easy as simply going to the bathroom and brushing your teeth, or it's not as simple as waking up and walking to the bus stop, or it's, not as simple as, trying something new for the first time. And we just wanted to share, so again, there's so many different variations as you saw in the chat, but think about each person's ability, because again, we may underestimate what we know versus what the person already knows. And so even there's 2 different ways. Colgate writes out this in 5 steps, and then another source wrote out 9 steps. So again, this looks different for everyone. And Colgate doesn't even talk about rinsing. So, but anyway, I'm not here to knock Colgate. But keep in mind, maybe the person that you're working with only needs these 5 steps, or maybe the person that you're working with needs the 9 or the 26 steps. And I hope that as you looked at others' lists, it helps you to break down the skill, because there's sometimes things that you wish that you may have included in your list that you saw in someone else's, which could include like walking to the bathroom or acquiring a toothbrush or purchasing toothpaste. So we hope that this was helpful for you. Last but not least, when we're teaching skills, we just want you to remember some of the following. It's hard to break down overlearned skills, meaning brushing your teeth might feel automatic, or walking outside to get your mail might feel automatic, or turning on boil or being able to boil water for pasta might be automatic for you. But some people really need a high level of detail and specificity. So being able to have multiple opportunities for practice with a high level of detail really are some of the best practices when working with someone, and again, tailoring it to some of their strengths and some of the challenges that they experience. Also, it's important to consider the skill depends on the context that you'll use it in. And thank you for those who are still sharing some of your steps in the chat. But being able to identify what is the context. So if this person is, again, we talked about turning on a shower, or we talked about using a stove, we talked about brushing teeth, even washing hands at home versus a public restroom. I know at home I have to turn my faucet handle, but maybe when you're in a public restroom, you just have to, wave your hands underneath it because it's automatic. Or you have to push it once and then you have to keep pushing it because it's not staying on. So it is so important to understand how you perform this skill and making it specific to the context or the environment. Does this person need any supplies? Do they have the supplies? Again, we spoke about some individuals needing to acquire toothpaste or toothbrush. Or maybe this person needs to have a cup to fill their water in, if that's helpful. And lastly, everyone does things differently. So it can be helpful to stay consistent when you're teaching while providing this breakdown, whether you're using a written list. I saw someone share, watching a YouTube video. Maybe the client you're working with enjoys watching videos and they work well, or they work best with a visualization in this way. But if we're using that tell, show, do, hopefully we have an opportunity to tell this person what this skill looks like, show them how it looks, and have them take a chance to try this skill on their own. So that at the end of the day, this person is now able to be independent and be able to go into the community or be able to do these things on their own without you. And also acknowledging how long it may have taken some of us to write these steps and how much easier it can be to do something for someone, but really highlighting the importance here of doing something with someone so that they can acquire the skill set on their own. Any questions about tell, show, do, or teaching skills, or using the skills teaching template rather? Okay. All right. Then we are wrapping up for today. We will share the evaluation in the chat. If you could provide us with some feedback This is an anonymous survey, so just taking a moment to let us know what was helpful, maybe what was not so helpful, what you needed more of, what you needed less of. Any comments we find quite helpful to just tailor our future trainings for you all. So Emily has just shared that link in the chat. And then last but not least, our final training session, so session 6 of the Golden Thread, is providing and documenting services, which will be next week. So next Monday, December 11th. And we ask that you try using the skills teaching template or any of the handouts even that we've shared today, reflecting on what went well, what was challenging, additional skills or resources that could be useful. And we want to thank you for your time, attention, and participation. Today's webinar was hosted by DBHR through the Washington Healthcare Authority. Again, we'd like to remind you that the slides, a link to the recording of the session, and a wealth of other resources will be available in the follow-up email. Please feel free to check out the YouTube channel that has been actively posting some of these recordings as well. If you have not been receiving the emails, don't forget to check out the Foundational Community Supports newsletter for all things FCS and upcoming trainings. And information on becoming an FCS provider is here. But that is all for us. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being so interactive and engaging. This makes it more fun for us. And we will see you for our last session next week. Same time, same place, December 11th. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too.